So before that, let's look at how we will merge the clusters. So there are different ways of merging the clusters based on the distance. So that distance, that was the vertical axis of the dendrogram, we want to see what is the criteria for that. So there are three broad criteria. We can have other kinds of criteria also. One is single linkage, the other is complete linkage, and then the third is centroid distance. So single linkage is based on minimum distance between two clusters, between any 2 points of two different clusters. Maximum is based on the maximum distance, and average is based on the distance between the centroids. So for example, if you have this cluster and you have this cluster, okay, and you have a third cluster, okay, so now let's say that we have these the following cluster memberships. So this is one cluster, this is another cluster, and this is the third cluster. Okay, so now we want to decide which of the two from these three have to be merged. Okay, so the minimum linkage will look at minimum distance between clusters. So the closest points between any two clusters. So here it is going to be between this point and this point, this point and this point, and let's say between this point and this point. Okay, so between the three green arrows, whichever is the minimum, that will represent the merging. Okay, so that is minimum. On the other hand, if we are looking at maximum linkage, then we will look at the maximum distance, so which could be, for example, between these 2 points, okay, between these 2 points, and between like these 2 points. So between the blue arrows, assume that these arrows are not curved but straight lines. The ones that represent the minimum, those two will be merged. So that is maximum linkage. And the third criteria would be that we are looking at the centroid, where we first find these centroids. So we have this centroid, so let's use a brighter color, orange. How about orange? So let's look at this point, we look at this point, and we look at this point, and now we are looking at the interdistance between the orange clusters or cluster centers. Okay, so that is the centroid based distance. So depending on which criteria you use for merging, your order of merging could be different. Okay, so depending on the application, you would either use a single linkage or a complete linkage or a centroid distance. Okay, and these distances, in general, we are talking about distances between xi and xj, or xi and cj, or xi and μj, right? So xi and μj, or the centroid, etc. This distance need not always be a centroid. Okay, it can this need not always be a Euclidean distance. What you can have is Euclidean distance. You can also have Mahalanobis distance. Okay, you can also have some sort of a distance metric which is neither of the two. So for example, it could be based on inverse of similarity. Similarity is computed by a Siamese neural network or something along those lines. So it could be some dissimilarity metric. So it could be actually any pairwise distance. As long as we can compute something that is pairwise, it will work for many of these clustering algorithms with slight modifications. So it need not always be Euclidean distance. We can even weigh some of the variables to be large distances versus small distances and so forth. Okay, so now let's look at some clustering criteria. Because it's an unsupervised learning, right? We are always wondering about whether we chose the hyperparameters to be correct. So for example, in k-means and fuzzy c-means, did we choose the k or the c correct? In dbScan, did we choose the min distance and the min number of points m and the distance radius epsilon to be correct, and so forth. There are many different ways of measuring whether a clustering criteria is good. Okay. In general, they are based on looking at whether points that belong to one cluster, they are more similar to their own cluster, the members of the same cluster, compared to the distance from other points that are outside the cluster. So that is the general criteria. We will look at two different ways of looking at it. One is the elbow criteria, the other is Davis-Bordin criteria. So in elbow method, we are looking at the percent or the proportion of variance that is explained by the clustering. So we have something like number of clusters. Alright, and this will range from 1 and it can go up to n. Okay, and on the y-axis we have variance explained. Okay, so if we have n different clusters, right, they will explain all the variance that there is. And if we have one cluster, then probably it will not explain any variance. So we will have a curve that will go like so, and somewhere it will have an elbow, and that elbow represents good number of clusters. Okay, now this elbow itself is subjective. Okay, whether it really represents something natural, a natural cut, we don't know. It could be a point of inflection. It could be something like at this point the rise is only 5% more, the 95% rise has already taken place. So a lot of these are still subjective criteria, but this visualization can help in deciding the number of clusters. So what is variance explained, right? So basically what we are looking at is between group variance versus the total variance. Okay, and basically it could be for example total variance minus the average or max variance within the cluster, right? So if we look at the total variance of points and we look at total variance of one cluster, we take their difference, we will get zero variance, we'll get a zero difference, right? Because there's only one cluster. The total variance of the data points, okay, is same as the variance of that single cluster, so we'll get 0. On the other hand, let's say these are the points and these are two different points, so two different sets of points. If we look at this set as well as this set, right, the total variance would be proportional to, let's say, the radius of this circle. Now from that, if I subtract either this average radius or the max of these radii, I will get some point which is there for two clusters. Okay, that difference would be somewhere here, and let's say that is the elbow point. That looks like a natural cut, and that would be the number of clusters that I have. So that's heuristic criteria, heuristic method to look at this using the elbow method. I encourage you to look at something similar called silhouette method. Okay. Now let's look at a slightly more mathematical index, mathematically well-defined index, which is the Davis-Bordin index. So here we are looking at two things, right? So instead of having that elbow, we are going to now convert that into a ratio so that we get a minimum. Okay. So basically what we are trying to minimize is the ratio of intra-cluster versus inter-cluster variation. Let's unpack this for a bit. So we want minimum variance within the cluster, so that we want points within the points in a cluster should be similar to each other. relative to points outside the cluster. Okay, so for this we will look at the variance in cluster I and variance in cluster J. We will take their average, or we'll take their sum, and we will take its ratio with if we take all the points together for the two clusters, what is the variance? Okay, we'll take that ratio. All right, and or we can take the distance between their centroids. Mij could be distance between the centroids of cluster I and cluster J, or it could be the variance of cluster I and cluster J points taken together. One is computationally more efficient, whereas the other could have nicer mathematical properties. So we will take these two ratios, and we will take the maximum of that over all other possible clusters for the ith cluster. So I and J are clusters, cluster indices. Okay, and we will take that average over all clusters, and we want to minimize it. So basically your this will be your DV index, and this will be your number of clusters. And basically, let's say if we start with one cluster, we want this to go down somewhere and then go up somewhere. So this will be the ideal number of clusters. But in realistic data, this will be somewhat noisy, and it may not always give you a global minima. So it's not a foolproof method, but we still want to we can use this method. And similarly, there are other methods that also give us similar answers. Now the challenge here is to keep in mind that no criteria is perfect, number one, and number two is that whenever we are doing this, make sure that the index that you are using it has some sort of normalization for number of clusters, because we are looking at an average here. There is a built-in normalization here. So now let's look at how does transformation of variables can have an impact on clustering. Right. So let's look at a set of data points that we want to cluster. Okay. So this is my x1 axis and this is my x2 direction. Now for some reason, if instead of x1 I use, let's say, x1 by 5, right? If I use x1 by 5, then my new x1 hat is equal to x1 by 5. So I'm going to stretch my axis. So this same number of points are going to be stretched. In one direction and not in the other direction. So what could have been a clustering like this now becomes a clustering like this. Okay, so the scale of the variables is very important. Okay, so a good practice is to normalize each dimension separately so that it has unit variance, for example. Okay. The other possibility is that you also want to look at whether the scale of one variable should be converted to a log transform or to a power transform. So for example, if my x1 is revenue per customer, okay, we know that revenue per customer distribution is going to be some sort of a heavy tail distribution. Sorry, it's going to be a skewed distribution. What that means is there are few customers that spend a lot of money, and there are a lot of customers that spend some sort of medium sort of money, but that's not right in the middle of the range. There is a tail skew towards the right? So this tail skew towards the right, it violates the assumption of isotropic in both directions of x1, right? So the hyperspheres that we had in k-means, they were isotropic, but this violates that assumption. Whereas if we if we take the log transform, we are going to compress the higher values, and it might transform into something that looks more like a Gaussian. Okay, so taking the transforms of variables is quite important. Okay, in thinking about whether I should be applying clustering to it right away, or whether it should be on the transform variable. So depending on the application, you want to take the right kind of transform. Okay, so with this we are coming towards the end of the discussion on clustering. There are just two prompts that I will have here, that there are advanced topics in clustering. One of them is basically, like I mentioned, clustering is finding different modes of a underlying probability distribution, and if we assume the underlying probability distribution to be a mixture of Gaussians where the variance of the Gaussians is different, then we can actually do a Gaussian mixture modeling, which I will talk about later in the course, using something called expectation maximization algorithm. So that we will cover later, but I do encourage you to look at another type of clustering, advanced clustering techniques rather, it's a set of techniques which is called spectral clustering. I'll just give you a brief idea of what is spectral clustering. Basically, what we are looking at is, let's say we have data points x1, x2 all the way up to xn, and we have dimension d1. So we have dimension 1, or let's call it, like we had genes gene1 up to d dimensions here, right? So if we look at one particular sample, one particular patient, for example, with different gene profiles, we can see that that if we look at them, if we find those that are similar to each other and they form a cluster, and others that form another cluster, and so forth, how we can now transform this is to plot something called a similarity matrix. So the size of this similarity matrix is n by n. So this is n by n, and basically what we have at each point is similarity of ith point, ith sample with the jth sample. Okay, so the similarity is going to be high on the diagonal, and it is going to be low off the diagonal. Okay, so now with this we can rearrange the rows and columns of this similarity matrix such that it has a block structure. We have a block where we have bunch of low values, then we have another block that has bunch of low values, and then we have another block that is a bunch of low values. So all we are doing is we are permuting rows and columns, so that the rows that appear together and the columns that appear together, they belong to one cluster, and these rows that appear in this block, they belong to one cluster, and so forth. What is special about these blocks, that these are low values, not just on the diagonal. On diagonal we'll have zero value, these are high values for similarity, not just on the diagonal, because on the diagonal we'll have the maximum similarity. These are high values. Everywhere else we have low values. So this block diagonal structure is a way to visualize these visualize clustering of different samples. And the way we get this is that if we look at each of these rows, right, those that are similar to two samples that are similar to each other are also, their similarity pattern is also similar to other rows within the same block. Okay, so the discovery of that is dependent on eigenvalue analysis of this similarity matrix. We can have a similarity matrix, or we can have a distance matrix, and the eigen analysis would just change in how you look at the highest eigenvalues versus the lowest eigenvalues, but that is basically the whole idea. So what we do is we'll get these similarity matrices, and based on these similarity matrices, after that we'll do an eigen analysis, and based on the eigenvalues that we get, we will be able to find out different modes of variation within the same matrix, and that basically gives rise to a whole bunch of techniques called spectral clustering, which I will not get into here, but it is a very interesting topic should you want to explore more. So then there are methods such as graph cut, where you look at these matrices, you form a graph between all the sample points, where having an edge between two samples means that they are similar. If there is no edge, that means they are not similar. And then what we are trying to do is we are trying to cut that graph with minimal number of cuts, and that will give us the clusters that we have for the data points. So these are ways where you can go beyond the Euclidean space, beyond just looking at Euclidean distances, to work with other similarity metrics to cluster points. Okay. With this, I come to an end of this topic of clustering. Thank you.